In today's session, we're going to continue on the series on organizational opportunities, stories, and lessons learned from the front lines. Today's story comes to us from a manufacturing company. They were making a stock environment, and they were dealing with a lot of production pressures to meet customer demand. We were able to stabilize production, and we improved flow significantly, reducing the lead time, improving the on-time delivery, reducing the work in process. When we did that, we clearly had one area that was a bottleneck area. So we went to that bottleneck area and we started analyzing that bottleneck area, and we found that they were only loading the machine to half its capacity. So what did we do to challenge the status quo and improve the productivity in this area? So let's talk about challenging the status quo. So when we look at a process and we look at how it's performed, and we ask the question, why are we doing that way? And we usually get the answer like, that's the way we've always done it. Or if we do it this other way, we have this problem that comes up. And a lot of times we have to challenge that using the Socratic method, because we may uncover what we call a Bigfoot. So what is a Bigfoot? So a Bigfoot is something that someone's talking about, or everybody's talking about, or it's a belief that was usually caused by some special cause event in the past. And then that condition no longer exists, and we continue to do the process the modified way because of that special cause, and then there's no evidence that that problem still exists in operations. So a lot of times we see where a problem happens, we alter the process because of the problem, we don't fix the problem, then that altered process becomes a normal condition. And we run that process the modified way, and after time, that becomes the new standard. And then we go ask the question, why are we doing that? It's like, well, I don't know. It's like, that's what we've always been doing. We've been doing that way for years. So when we look at it, we need to be good problem solvers. So we don't start modifying the process when a problem happens. So if we have a special cause, like a one-time event that causes the process to deviate, we don't want to put a subsystem in place or change the process due to that problem. We need to be good problem solvers and get to the root cause of that problem and prevent that problem from happening again, so we don't have to alter the process. So what is an effect? So that's the outcome or result or consequence of some action. So we typically have some special cause event that happens that causes the process to deviate, and that creates the effect. What's the cause? It's something that brings about the effect or result. So we got to understand what created that effect. And then, of course, we got to get to the root cause, which is the initiating cause or the causal chain that leads to the outcome or effect that we're dealing with. So we need to be good problem solvers. So when we have an issue that causes us to want to change the process or put a subsystem in place, we need to step back and say, stop, right? Let's analyze this and figure out what's going on. So most companies I work with are not very good at problem solving. If I had to classify what companies are terrible at, it's problem solving. They don't know how to go through and systematically solve problems. I use the PDCA cycle. It stands for Plan, Do, Check, Act. There's multiple steps in this Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle. The first one is to assess the current situation and find out what's going on, gather data about the current situation, get as much data as possible about what's happening. Then once we do that, then let's define the problem. Once we identify the problem, then let's identify primary causes and then analyze those causes and determine root cause. So what I see is companies skipping steps in this plan phase, not doing the correct assessment, coming up with a solution before they define the problem. And if you follow the steps and you have the discipline to follow the steps, you'll get to the root cause and you'll come up with a solution that'll permanently solve the problem. Then once we do that, we need to build accountability into the process. So what is responsibility and what is accountability? So responsibility is being answerable for something within one's power, control, or management. Accountability is being responsible for something and ultimately being answerable for your actions. And accountability is something you hold a person only after the task is done or not done, where responsibility can be shared and accountability cannot. So we don't want shared responsibility. We want people to be accountable for their actions and their process, and then if the actions aren't done correctly, we need to know immediately and take counter actions to correct the situation. So when we build accountability in the process, we want to look at the management window. So the management window is the time between when an action happens until we understand the effect of that action. What we want to do is reduce the management window, so the time between when actions taken until we know the effect of those actions. So a lot of times what happens is products or services will go through multiple steps, and then we'll find out there's a problem down the line at some point, and then we got to go back and figure out like what happened, what do we need to do to correct it, and the management window is typically long. In this case, it could be days or weeks. What we want to do is reduce that management window, so when the action is taken on the first process, if that action is not the correct action, we take immediate countermeasures to correct that action. We shorten the management window significantly, and by doing that, that'll reduce the problem from proliferating further down the stream. So as we know, as problems move down the supply chain, they get bigger and bigger, and the effects become more and more negative. The sooner we address the problem, the smaller the issue, the less the effect of that problem proliferating down the supply chain. So then we want to do is identify what is normal. If we understand what normal condition is, and we can look at the process, and we have identified what normal condition is, then we understand what's not normal. So we need to understand what good looks like. When we understand what good looks like, then we can spot abnormality. Then when we have abnormality, if we have accountability built into the process, we can take immediate action to correct that abnormal situation and get it back to normal. That'll prevent any Bigfoots from happening. Then we want to incorporate visual management. So visual management allows us to communicate through sight without verbal communication. It allows everyone in the process to understand the current situation, and it involves visual aids and displays the status of the process. So good visual management, anybody should be able to come into this area without asking questions and understand the current condition. And if we can understand that, we understand what normal is, and of course we can quickly spot abnormality. So in this case, they were loading the machine to 50% of the capacity. When we asked them why they were doing that, they're like, well, if we load it to full, it jams up downstream. And when it jams up, that creates a big problem. We have to call maintenance. Maintenance has to come out several hours to unjam it. We might break some components. They have to fix that, so we could be down for hours or sometimes even days when the machine jams. So I said, okay, so let's understand why it's happening. So I said, next day we're going to get maintenance, we're going to get the supervisors. And when I talked to all the supervisors and shift operators, they had the same answers. If you load the machine to the full capacity, it's going to jam up. So it's like, okay, let's get the resources out here, let's study it and see what happens. So of course we go out there, we load it to full capacity, and what happens? Nothing. It doesn't jam. So this is a Bigfoot where we had probably a special cause at one point that caused it to jam, and that condition no longer exists. And one of the things that we did realize is that when we went to smaller batches, when we increased the flow, the changeovers between batches increased, which never caused a buildup in the machine. So when they're running big batches, there would be a buildup of machine when there was delays, and that buildup would build up over time over a big batch, and all of a sudden it would jam. Well, when we don't have the big batches anymore, there's no jamming of the machine. So that was when we changed the batch size, that problem went away, but they never adjusted the process to fix it because they never understood what the real problem was. And so now we put visual aids in place to understand when the machine is not being loaded to full capacity, that andon light comes on and tells us that they're not loading to full capacity and it's not running to optimum efficiency, and we take immediate corrective action to correct the problem. In this case, we put a troubleshooting guide in place. If you see these conditions, these are the things you need to check first. So the operator is the first line of defense. He has an action item that he can take based on the condition. If he can't fix it, he immediately calls the supervisor. Supervisor comes over. He has a set of actions that he needs to do. And then if that doesn't work, then we call maintenance, and it keeps getting elevated until the problem gets resolved. So that's our session for today. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's lots of videos about operational excellence and how to change the culture in the organization and improve the productivity of the workforce.